The Battle of Trzciana took place on 25 June 1629 and was one of the battles of the Polish-Swedish War or Second Swedish-Polish War. The Polish forces were led by Crown Field Hetman Stanislaw Konispolski and imperial troops under Hans-Georg von Arnim-Boitzenburg, sent by Emperor Ferdinand II to aid Sigismund III, met with troops commanded by Swedish King Gustav II Adolf, who supported the Protestant Lutherans of Germany and Northern Europe. Gustav Adolf is almost killed or captured twice. Fighting in Prussia continued after the battle into July and August and ended with stalemate and finally a truce accepted by Sigismund III. History. Swedish and Polish-Lithuanian King Sigismund III sought to hold on to the crown of Sweden, but was rejected by the Swedish people, and Sigismund's uncle Karl became King of Sweden instead. Sigismund wanted to regain the Swedish crown and he also wanted to gain the crown of Russia. Russia requested help from Karl of Sweden. The Holy Roman Empire under the Habsburgs attempted to regain European countries for Catholicism and to gain control of northern German Baltic Sea trading cities, namely the Hansa, and to reverse the North having become Lutheran and thereby Sweden gaining supremacy over the Baltic Sea. The trade routes for some time had been controlled by a powerful Denmark, which controlled and collected at the Sound in its territory. Sigismund III of Poland-Lithuania sought to wrest the Baltic Sea with its lucrative trade routes for himself, and he repeatedly requested Swedish King Gustav Adolf to renounce his title of Swedish King as a prerequisite for a truce and peace negotiations. The Swedes saw through these delaying tactics by Sigismund III, and so the battles and skirmish went on for years. Eve of the meeting at Honigfelde in early 1629, the Polish King Sigismund III Vasa received military support from the Emperor Ferdinand II. The reinforcements, 5,000 infantry and reiters, led by Hans-Georg von Arnim, arrived in Prussia in late spring 1629, and set up camp near Grudziądz. After wintering in Sweden, Gustav Adolf arrived in Prussia in May. Several skirmishes broke out, one on June 27, 1629 at Honigfelde south of Sztum, where Gustav Adolf led his army of total of 4,000 cavalry and 5,000 infantry from Marienburg against the Imperial and Polish forces. Battle Swedish objective to confront one side before unification failed, and Gustav felt forced to withdraw against Marienburg to not interfere with their superior numbers. However, while discovering of his withdrawal, Polish hetman Konispolski and von Arnim started persecute the Swedes with a force of 1,300 hussars, 1,200 light cavalry and 2,000 reiters, who managed to caught up at the village of Honigfelde on the Sztum heath. On learning of the proximity of the Poles, Gustav II Adolf ordered the troops of Rhine Count Otto Ludwig to continue the march as it is learned that the Polish and Imperial forces are in the vicinity. Otto Ludwig did not follow orders and instead maintained a position at Honigfelde with 1,950 cavalry, 60 infantry, and 10 3x-pounder leather guns. Meanwhile, Konispolski ordered his Polish Cossack horse to advance through the woods northwest of Sadow and his hussars to make a flanking maneuver behind the hills southeast of Honigfelde. Von Arnim's slower and heavier horse regiments reached the battlefield last and formed into battle order to attack the Swedes frontally. The Swedish leather cannons began to fire on the approaching Cossacks as they came out of the woods, and the Rhine Count ordered his arquebusiers to attack them. Both the Cossacks and arquebusiers were mobile cavalry with good firepower, but the Germans' arquebusiers gained the upper hand and began pushing the outnumbered Cossacks back towards the forest. At this moment the Polish hussars arrived from their flanking maneuver. A few companies were sent to deal with the Swedish artillery and the 60 musketeers supporting them, but the majority advanced to charge the engaged arquebusiers. The arquebusiers quickly collapsed as the hussars charged their flank and rear and fled in great disorder towards the north towards the rest of their army. Gustav Adolf arrived to aid the Rhine Count, and they regrouped by charging with Zacharias Pauli's squadron and Reinhold Unrep's Finnish squadron of 700 cavalry. But most of these were demoralized by the flight of the rearguard and joined within it. Gustav Adolf was at great risk as he and the remaining cavalry were pursued by Polish Cossacks. He was almost captured by a Cossack, but escaped when one of his officers, Erich Soup, shot the attacker and saved Gustavus to rejoin together with the rest of the cavalry. The situation was critical, as the Swedes reached the village of Strasau, but Field Marshal Wrangel momentarily stabilized the situation by charging the pursuing Poles with his entire force of 2,150 cavalry. This gave Gustav Adolf the time to reassemble 1,000 men of his fleeing squadrons and rejoin battle. Von Arnim's cuirassiers and Konispolski's hussars once again charged, and the Swedes were thrown back once again, but this time in better order. The Swedes then began a withdrawal to Polkowice, 7 kilometers from Trzciana, where the Swedish Guard cuirassiers and Streif's squadron of 750 men took up a defensive position. During their retreat, the Swedes were subjected to a fierce pursuit. As they neared Polkowice, they were relieved by a counterattack by Streif's squadron. The battle now reached a deadlock until von Arnim once again caught up with his cuirassiers and turned the battle against the Swedes. The Swedes again withdrew, this time to Neudorf, where the infantry of 1,260 with 8 6x-12 pounder guns had taken up position by the river crossing and without too much trouble were able to hold off the tired Polish Imperial cavalry until darkness fell. The following day the Swedes were able to withdraw unmolested to Marienburg. After the battle, the Swedish cavalry had suffered serious losses during the battle, with about 600 dead and 200 captured by the Poles, including many high-ranking officers, along with 1,300 of the initially 5,500 horses, being unable to serve the cavalry due to losses and wounds. The Swedish infantry, however, remained mostly intact, and overall the balance of forces in the war remained largely unchanged. A further attack by the Polish side under Konispolski on July 15 was repelled, as was one on August 9 on the Elbinger Werder by a demoralized Polish group looking for food. Soon after, foreign diplomats arrived at Warsaw and the Truce of Altmark was signed, which ended the hostilities of the Polish-Swedish War. The Battle of Trzciana is commemorated on the tomb of the unknown soldier, Warsaw, with the inscription TRZCIAN 825 Vi 1629.